Well, first I want to say just how honored and humbled I was to even be asked to speak tonight. So I really thank you all for being here. I want to share the importance of finding my spiritual paycheck to help balance out my life as I entered corporate America. All my work prior to my current position was in the nonprofit world, where there is a very strong connection between your professional paycheck and your emotional or spiritual paycheck. However, once I transitioned into the for-profit world, I really struggled to find that connection. And I don't think that it's a coincidence that once my spiritual paycheck was in place, that my professional world improved as well. And tonight I want to describe how I got to that place. As Jen said, my name is Maureen Radighieri, and Radighieri is still new in the fact that it's only about 13 or 14 months old. And I am a pharmaceutical rep with Pfizer, and it's basically my job to develop relationships with doctors and their staff and tell them about the benefits of my medication. So before we get started, to tell you a little bit more about myself, I grew up in Baton Rouge, Louisiana, in a very typical, do we have some Baton Rouge love over here? There are a lot of LSU people nowadays around here, so I'm assuming LSU? Yeah. Okay, very good. And I suppose I need to start my timer so I don't go too long. But grew up in Baton Rouge. You may not like me in just a minute. From a typical Catholic family, I was the fourth of 5 kids. Every Sunday at 10:30, we marched ourselves into the same pew at St. Alphonsus. And if we weren't there, people kind of wondered what was going on with the Sorrells crew, because we were in the same place each and every week. My life changed pretty dramatically when I was about 9. My father was killed in a car accident. And I share that with you because from an early age, I learned to look to God for comfort, peace, and guidance. Because my earthly father was taken and I knew he was in heaven, and I was daddy's little girl. So I knew I wanted to live a life that would get me to the same place my father was. So it was a really good thing that came out of a tough situation. So for me, God has always been a comfort. So for my 13 years of Catholic school, really fostered my relationship with my Catholic faith and with God. And after that, my high school or my childhood was actually really typical. I decided to be a true rebel and not go to LSU, but go to Ole Miss because I know people are laughing. I had this wonderful mom, but she was really overprotective, and I needed to put a little distance between my wonderful mother and myself. I got a partial leadership scholarship there, so for me that was a sign from God that Ole Miss was where I was supposed to go to college. So that's exactly what I did. And while there, I met a great friend who actually was local to this area. He grew up in Grapevine, and he told me about a place called the Pines. He was like, "Mo, you have to come work here. It's the best place ever." And so I was like, okay. So sight unseen, I applied and was hired as a summer camp counselor. And I have to tell you, if you have ever had the opportunity to be a camp counselor, you know it's the best job there is. You get paid to be a kid, and you get paid at the Pines to talk about God and your Catholic faith every single day. And you do so while getting muddy and sweaty, but making great friendships with your peers, as well as getting to meet these great kids that teach you about God's love all at the same time. So the Pines was someplace that I worked many of the summers in college. Fell in love with it so much I came back after I graduated from college. And just so you know, the Pines serves kids that are age 7 to 16 out in East Texas in Big Sandy, if any of you have ever been out there. We do summer camp as well as outdoor education and weekend retreats. And so I am currently on the board along with some other friends here. We're always looking for volunteers and donations, so if you need a place to serve, you can see me afterwards. But the Pines was fantastic. I went from the camp role and I moved actually into Dallas to the marketing role afterwards. So the Pines actually gave me my first spiritual paycheck. Yes, it gave me a professional small paycheck, but my spiritual paycheck with the Pines was huge because I was singing and dancing about God every day, and I was teaching youth about God's love. And so you kind of don't get any better than that. We used to ask, is the Pines that special, or is this how God really intended the world to be? And I think the answer is a little bit of both. So huge spiritual paycheck at the Pines. Moved into Dallas, which is actually how I'm still here today, to do the marketing for the Pines. So it was my job to sell the camp the summer camp programs as well as the year-round programs and the weekend retreats to parishes and individuals here in the Dallas Metroplex. Again, still a great spiritual paycheck, because while I wasn't always the one singing and dancing with the kids, I was trying to recruit families to receive that benefit for their kids at camp, because I always say that the Pines does youth ministry beautifully, and that's what we need in our church to keep this going for us. And so the Pines is a fantastic place. So again, still had a very strong spiritual paycheck, even as the marketing director. There was a point where I came to missing actual interaction with kids. So there was a board member from the Pines who was actually a principal at a place called the Shelton School here in Dallas. And she kind of recruited me to become a teacher in the ethics department at Shelton. Shelton is a fantastic school working with ADD, dyslexic, and ADHD kids. And so they had this ethics curriculum to try to help them in their choices. So what I basically taught was character education. So I was teaching values and vices and talking about how it impacts our choices. Actually, the quote that basically the curriculum was based is, choices become habits, habits become character, character becomes destiny. And so this was, again, a fantastic opportunity to serve God. It maybe wasn't truly religion, but it was helping youth to make good choices so that they could live a good life. And I know that that does please God when we live a good life. So really enjoyed my time teaching. But about 5 or 6 years in, I started to get a little restless and kind of came to a crossroads and was like, is this what God wants me to do for the rest of my life? At this point, I was still single and kind of wondered, is teaching what I was supposed to do? Will I be able to provide for myself down the line? So I started praying, God, what is it that you want of me? I even worked with a life coach trying to look at my skills and see what would be best for me. And thank goodness God understands how I work, and he has to be really obvious and really clear with his answers a lot of times. So the answer kind of came in a strange way. My brother actually was working for Pfizer at that time as well, and he won a reward trip. So if you're in business, you know a lot of times if you win an award, they take you on basically a paid vacation, and you get to bring a guest. Well, unfortunately, his fiance couldn't go. So he asked his big sister, and I found a way to say yes, because as a teacher, getting a free vacation to St. Maarten was a pretty awesome opportunity, and I didn't want to pass it up. So actually, it was a really busy time at Shelton, but again, couldn't pass it up. So I had some great coworkers who kind of jumped in and said that, you know what, they would handle casino night with the student council and take care of it and allow me to go to St. Maarten. So that's exactly what I did. So my brother and I head to DFW. We start meeting up with some other Pfizer reps, and I am pretty much a true extrovert and a big dork and just really like to meet people. So I just started talking to everyone who was coming on the trip with us, and just really, you know, they're outgoing people as well, so really engaging, and we were having a really good time. We arrive at the hotel, and we have like a welcome reception, and there's this one man that I'm really kind of connecting with, and his name is Everett. And he and I are, again, continuing to talk. We're making it through the buffet line, and because I'm just talking and I really don't know who I'm speaking with, I didn't realize that he was a VP and somebody really important. So we get to the end of the buffet line, and he says, Maureen, why aren't you with Pfizer? And I said, I don't know, would you hire me? And he said, you know, I think I might. And so why don't we talk before the end of the trip, and we'll see what happens. So I managed to get the courage up within the next couple of days, and you know, had my first kind of interview on the beach in St. Maarten, but it ended up working out. I got back to Dallas, and fast forward a few months, and I was hired by Pfizer, and felt very fortunate. But I was taking a huge step in a much different direction. I had been in the nonprofit world my entire career and wasn't quite sure what was next. But God had pretty much dropped the opportunity in my lap. And again, I need him to be clear and obvious, and I kind of took that as a sign that that's what he wanted me to do in that next step. So leap of faith and jumped into the for-profit big pharma business with Pfizer. And I have to say, it was not an easy transition. Shocker. to probably most of you. But that was because there was, again, everything day to day was very different. But as I started to get the science and the sales techniques and started to kind of get to know my offices better so that I wasn't the stranger that was coming in and annoying, because if you're sitting in the waiting room and you see the drug reps go in, you're probably annoyed because you think your doctor is going to be later. That's not always the case, but it was a lot to adjust to. Slowly and surely I was kind of adjusting, but there was still something that I was really missing every day. And I was trying to kind of really put my hands on it and give it a name and try to figure out what that was. And I have to say, through this whole time, I was still active at church. I was still going to Mass each week. I had attended a retreat and was involved. But there was still the fact that my day-to-day didn't feel like it involved God from 9 to 5 like I wanted it to. And actually, the catalyst that kind of changed all that actually came because of work. My regional manager, who is essentially my boss's boss, great man by the name of Todd Liddell, and he actually is the gentleman that interviewed and ended up hiring me, and he pushed down a book for all of his reps in North Texas to read, and he actually provided the book for all of us, and it's called The Dream Manager by Matthew Kelly. And I don't know if any of you have heard of it or if you've heard of Matthew Kelly, because actually Matthew Kelly is a Catholic writer. Todd didn't realize this, and it doesn't really play a part in The Dream Manager, but I thought it was pretty fitting for me that a book that was so impactful actually was or is by a Catholic writer. And the premise of the Dream Manager is, it's a parable, and it basically says that our jobs should be the vehicle that drives our dreams and not the main purpose of our lives. And the book ends with a how-to of setting up your own dream book. It's 12 chapters, and you put dreams under each of these chapters, and then you kind of give yourself a timeline within a year, within 5 years, or a lifetime dream. And Todd so believed in this that our business plan actually had to include 1 to 2 dreams each year. And when you're being graded on it, it definitely encourages you to make sure that you're doing what you say is important to you. So Todd and work is actually what was able to help me start to pursue my spiritual paycheck within the corporate world. So the two that I want to share with you that really impacted me earning that spiritual paycheck had to do with my first dream, having to do with RCIA, the right of Christian initiation for adults, which fell under both legacy and spirituality for me. And then the second was a trip to the Holy Land that fell both under travel and spirituality as well. So before I kind of keep going, I didn't realize just how closely linked a professional and a spiritual paycheck would actually end up being. So I'll follow up with that later. So at this point in my life, I am, again, doing RCIA, but I'm there more for me. I don't know if any of you can relate to this. I was single at this point. I was dating, and being a cradle Catholic in South Louisiana, where everybody's Catholic, if you can't defend your faith, it's really not a big deal because everybody around you is Catholic. But if you get in the dating world and people start to challenge you on why you do things, and maybe not even challenge, but just kind of ask, and as a cradle Catholic, I couldn't necessarily answer those questions because I didn't have the need to know them because it was just what I knew. So it made sense to me, and I didn't have that desire to kind of, or I didn't think I needed to know. But I realized that was actually not the case. So I started attending RCIA to try to learn. And when I did, you guys already know this, our faith is amazing and it's rich, and you're missing out on so much if you don't really dive in and answer and really start to look at some of the meaning behind why we do what we do, because there's a meaning behind everything. So I decided at that point that it was no longer about me learning, but it was about me giving. I think the RCIA program is so important because people are walking away from what they know to be true and what they've lived their whole life, and for many times what their family is, and they're stepping away and saying, I want to do something different. I believe that there's something more out there. So I feel that we as Catholics have to have a really strong program of sharing our amazing faith with these individuals, because again, it is such a courageous step, and if any of you are converts, you know that. So I was able to really think, okay, what can I leave as legacy right now? I'm not married, I'm not gonna be having a child anytime soon. What can I do to leave a legacy? And for me, in my parish being so important, I wanted to contribute to the RCIA program. And so our current director had actually just left to go to the seminary, so he had asked our friend Jose Fontanez to step in as the director, and Jose and I kind of worked together and decided to do a divide and conquer in trying to really develop our program, because it was good, but I think that there's so much more that we have to offer to candidates and catechumens. And so my first goal that I had written down for RCIA had to do with creating a variety of strong and well-versed speakers to create a more structured and to add more structure to our small group to take our program to the next level. So for me, this writing it down and having a goal really brought it into focus. So my Thursday nights were a highlight of my week. That's when we would meet as for RCIA. And it was, I think, that structure, again, of writing it down and what I wanted helped to bring it together, and I started to get fulfillment in working with the program, because I could see what was being offered and how the candidates and the catechumens were responding, and I could see the passion that they were gaining for their Catholic faith. So my spiritual paycheck came each Thursday night when we would go to a small group and they'd be all on fire about what they had just read or what somebody had just said, or asking deeper questions. And so I started really to feel like I was contributing to something. Again, this is all our faith. It was just a matter of presenting it to those individuals. And I felt like at Easter, it was a huge bonus that I got paid out because I really got to see the actual confirmation and see them crying, and we're crying because this journey that they have been on has finally become real. They get to receive the Eucharist, and it is just a beautiful, beautiful moment. And so for me, this was the first time I was really starting to feel that gap get smaller as I'm in corporate America, because I'm getting a spiritual paycheck every week with the RCIA program. So the second one that I was mentioning is the Holy Land, a trip to the Holy Land. And it was this trip that really allowed me to start bringing my faith into what I do every single day. So what happened there is my parish started to advertise in 2009 that they were going to be taking a trip to the Holy Land in May of 2010. And I was like, God, that would be awesome, but that's something you do when you're older, not right now. And then I was flipping through my little dream book, and wouldn't you know it, that under 2 categories I had a trip to the Holy Land. So there was really no reason for me to say no to this opportunity. I didn't have to find people to travel with. I didn't have to do anything but pay my money, and the trip was planned out. So again, clear and obvious, God spoke to me, and so I realized that this was my time to go to the Holy Land. So needless to say, the trip was amazing. If you ever, or just put it on your life list and just know that it will be a one day, because it is a truly amazing experience. We walked the Stations of the Cross. We spent 5 mornings on Calvary. We touched the stone that Jesus' body was prepared. We were in the Dead Sea. It was just an amazing spiritual experience. And the way that I was able to bring that into work was, in the day-to-day, you're making small talk with your offices, and people would ask, oh, what do you have going on? And I would say, well, actually, I'm getting ready to go to the Holy Land. And they would be a little intrigued. And so I would say, eventually, it would, in more and more of my offices, I said, there's a lot of places that you can leave prayer intentions. So if you would like, you can write down intentions. I won't read them, but I'll bring them with me on the trip. And guys, you would be surprised. I had one of those big, huge manila envelopes filled with intentions from doctors, from nurses, from MAs, from staff, from office members, as well as my friends and family. And it was such a gift and such a blessing to be trusted with their prayers, the things they say to God, they gave to their drug rep. And so, exactly. So I bring the intentions with me and leave them in various places. And we were at the Wailing Wall, so there were some in there, and there were some in various places all over Israel. And so the way that I got to bring that back to my day-to-day is I got to go back to each and every one of those doctors, staff members, nurses, MAs, and say, this is where I left your intentions. For some, I was able to actually show them a picture of where I left their intentions. And after someone brings your prayers and your desires to God's holiest place, the relationship changes. So it was no longer necessarily customer and drug rep or somebody that brings in coffee every week. There was a deeper relationship at that point because we could then had an open door to talk about God all the time. So they knew what was important to me if I had vacationed in the Holy Land. So when I would say that I was doing X on Thursday night with my, RCIA group or doing something with the Pines, they weren't surprised and they kind of knew that. One office even said, oh, Maureen, I lost something. Who do you pray to? And I said, well, you don't pray to them. We ask for intercession, but it's St. Jude. And so anyway, that was such a gift. And it was a way of me getting my spiritual paycheck because I now was not a drug rep 9 to 5 and a Catholic elsewhere. I was able to bring what is the most passionate to me as the things that I talk about every day. And just kind of in closing with that story is there was one particular doctor who was very much, I'm the doctor, you're the drug rep, and kept a kind of a standoffish situation, which I get. But one day I was having lunch with her shortly after my trip, and I mentioned where I'd recently been. And she lit up when I said the Holy Land. She said, hold on a second. She got up and she went and got her daughter, who was a grown woman that works there, and sat back down and she goes, now tell us all about it. So I got to go through the entire trip, and she started talking about how that is one of her biggest desires, is to go to the Holy Land. So I kind of said, well, this is the organization that I used, and I did this, that, and I said, this is a Catholic organization that I went with. I don't know if that's who you would like to go with, but still, the denomination at that moment didn't matter. It was the idea that here was somebody who let her guard down, and I wasn't just customer and rep anymore. We were having a real deeper conversation. And from that point forward, my relationship with her is on a different level. It is more real because we have talked about the things that really do matter in the day-to-day. So I mentioned earlier not really realizing how closely linked my professional and my spiritual paychecks would be. But it was about this time as RCIA is developing and I've gone to the Holy Land that I finally win my first trip to not St. Maarten, but the equivalent of. So it was my first time to really be one of the top performers at that time. And so that's the coincidence that I don't really think that it is. It's when you're a balanced mind and soul that we are more complete and we are able to do even more in our day-to-day. So why am I telling you all of this is it's basically just giving another title to what it is that Jen and YCP hope for all of us, which is I want you to find your spiritual paycheck, and whether that's in the job that you do 9 to 5 or if it's supplementing between outside of work and inside of work. But for me, it made a huge difference in being able to step into corporate America but still get some of the benefits of the work that I did from nonprofit. Second is surround yourself with Catholic or like-minded people. One of the well-versed and strong speakers I spoke of happened to be a drug rep that stood around in a drug closet with me, that when we were waiting, we didn't know each other, but I kind of said, how was your weekend? And he was like, well, I just converted to Catholicism over Easter. And so Ty Jackson is his name, and he is a Church of Christ convert, and he was the first speaker that I brought into the RCIA program, and he is so passionate and so amazing, and he's a mentor for me. I do better from learning from people. So I'll be in the hallway, and I'm like, Ty, I got a question for you. So we're sitting down with our little drug bags, and we're talking about something with our faith. Second is a friend of mine, Richard, who's here tonight, who's also a drug rep with me. Turns out we are currently on the board of the Pines together because I recruited him. He happened to have sent his kids to the Pines, probably while I was there. I'm not exactly sure, but when I have a business question or just a how do I handle this situation question, I call Richard, because I trust the fact that he does make good decisions. We have similar values, and I know that he will give me a really good answer. And then personally, this is just kind of funny, so I had to share it with you. I have a group of girlfriends that I met through doing a retreat, and we were all in a similar place in life. We were all single when we started 8 years ago, but we got together every Monday night for 8 years to pray the Chaplet of Divine Mercy and watch The Bachelor. So it kind of was a little bit of both, but it was a great start to an amazing friendships that we've been together for years and have seen each other through the good and the bad. And then just last, learn your faith so that you can defend it or be confident. Even if you don't have all the answers. I had a doctor challenge me about priest being married, and we kind of talked a little bit about it, and he goes, wow, you actually kind of know something about that. I was like, I can't say I have all the answers, but I really believe it. And so that's all he needed to see, was the fact that I was willing to try to hold my own in the situation. So just know it, because it is amazing. So with that, I know that I've probably gone way too long, but I want to thank my husband for helping me kind of organize my thoughts, and for my friends that have been here to support me tonight.